Good morning. Senator Warren Hamilton from Senate District 7 with a legislative update about some things that have been in the news of late. There have been a bill come out of the Senate that Senator Daniels authored that mirrors the Texas heartbeat abortion law. And then there's a bill coming out of the House that does the same thing minus the heartbeat. It's the heartbeat bill without the heartbeat requirement. That's House Bill 4327. And then there's a Senate bill, number 612, which passed off of a House floor yesterday. Senate Bill 612, authored by Senator Dom, my friend and colleague. What I am here to tell you about today is, first of all, I'll say that I hope that these bills do in fact end abortion. My sincerely held belief is that they will not only not end abortion, they will in fact not even curtail the number of abortions that are going on in our state at present. Here in the United States, we have built our legal system on the principle of equal justice under the law, in that no man or woman, or in this case, baby, is above the law, and no baby is below the law. So, what Senate Bill 612 does, and all these bills do, is they specifically have provisions in here, and I'm reading on page 2 of Senate Bill 612. This section does not authorize the charging or conviction of a woman with any criminal offense in the death of her own unborn child. Now, people are going to come out with the big hue and cry that says, oh, every woman that seeks an abortion is a victim of rape and under duress and so on and so forth. Number one, that's not true. The vast majority of women who seek abortions either seek them because they don't see a way out, or, which is completely in keeping with Hosea, which God says, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Furthermore, he also says that we've rejected the self-evident truth that's present before us that he's revealed to us. But I digress. A greater percentage are elective, and they are having abortions not because they don't see a way out. They're having abortions simply because they can. Until we address this, and until we establish equal justice under the law, then these bills, like this, are going to fail. Planned Parenthood is not opening up 2 new facilities in Oklahoma because our business climate makes it hostile to people who want to ply the nefarious trade of murdering for contract those preborn neighbors of ours. Here's another more worldly example. The gun manufacturer Weatherby, they moved from California to Wyoming. Why? Because Wyoming is friendly to firearms manufacturers and California is not. Remington, firearms manufacturer that has been in Ilion, New York since its founding in the 1830s, decided to move to Huntsville, Alabama. Unfortunately, Remington is now bankrupt, but they didn't move from a place where they'd been for almost 200 years to a new state because the climate for gun manufacturers in New York was friendly to them. So Planned Parenthood isn't opening 2 new facilities in Oklahoma because they're worried about our laws. Our laws, and I use that air quotes with as much sarcasm as I can muster here in this video, are not going to do a blessed thing. The heartbeat bill. Well, by the very definition of the law, the heartbeat bill is a total conflict of interest. Who would take an automobile to a mechanic and say, I want you to find out what's wrong with it and then let me know and send me a bill for it? You could end up with your snow coating replaced on the underside. You could end up with your blinker fluid replaced. So what we're doing here is we're asking the person who financially benefits from the murder of the child to determine if there's a heartbeat there. Well, here's a point to ponder. If there's not a heartbeat, why are we doing an abortion? because we all say life begins at conception, right? Here's another thing. Conception, there's been two terms used in these bills. Number one is fertilization. That's defined as when the sperm unites with the egg. The other one is conception, which many people who are looking for a loophole take to mean that that is when the multi-celled new human being is implanted in the uterine wall. And so they say you don't have a pregnancy until implantation happens. Well, that's false. The minute you have the sperm uniting with the egg, you have a real live human being with its own DNA created in the image of God. And anything, any birth control pill which is allowed under House Bill 4327, any IUD that allows fertilization but prohibits implantation is by the very definition an abortion, which we all hear this big hue and cry every time campaign season runs around. It's murder, it's murder. And it is. Everybody go like this right here. It is murder. So if it's murder, then why do we not treat it as murder? If a woman contracts with somebody to come murder me, you know what that makes her in that case? A principal. Under the definition of a principal and an accessory under Oklahoma statute, she is, by that very definition, a principal. Yet we throw our statutes out and the principle of equal justice and equal protection under the law, we throw those things out the window because we somehow want to hold up aborted mothers as victims. Well, the statute already has it in place for somebody who commits a criminal act under duress. If you're driving a getaway vehicle and the guy's got a gun to your head, you're not going to get prosecuted. You may get arrested, but the charges are going to get dropped. Equal justice under the law, page 2 of Senate Bill 612. A person convicted of performing, not soliciting or contracting for, but performing or attempting to perform an abortion shall be guilty of a felony. What kind of a felony? Grand theft auto? Burglary? Homicide? Manslaughter? What felony? Punishable by a fine not to exceed $100,000 or by confinement in the custody of the Department of Corrections for a term not to exceed 10 years, or by such fine and imprisonment. So, for killing a person, and that's what we always say, right? We campaign on this. Sanctity of life, campaign on this. Oh, it's a person from the moment of conception. If it is, then what other person can you murder and get off with a fine not to exceed $100,000 and or a term in the Department of Corrections not to exceed 10 years? What if it's 1 year? What if it's $1,000? Is that equal justice under the law? How many of you who are listening to me right now would be satisfied that justice was served if you or somebody you loved was murdered and what you got was that the murderer served a term of not to exceed 10 years or got a fine of not to exceed $100,000? The other thing that these Texas heartbeat bills do, and like I said before, if it ends abortion, I'll be the first one to give them a standing ovation. I'm willing to look foolish, but I'm not willing to put my fingerprints on something that I believe is erroneous. The Texas heartbeat bills and our own versions thereof, what they do is they place the burden of proof on the person who is being accused of having facilitated or participated in an abortion. So, theoretical situation, and the statute of limitation on this thing is 6 years. Why 6 years? So 6 years ago, you could have taken your wife or your girlfriend or whomever to have an abortion at her request. And so your neighbor could have somehow surreptitiously surveilled you and become aware of this knowledge. So then, they don't have to sue you right then. They have to wait, or they can wait, up to 6 years. You might have moved to Hawaii 5 years ago. So now we've got somebody in Hawaii who's being sued for doing something which is legal under our laws. But the actual person who's, by very definition of our statutes, the principal in the crime, has immunity. This person who's being sued, number one, how do we get them back from Hawaii to answer for a civil charge here in the state of Oklahoma? And number two, why is it that we're doing this now? Another point to ponder on these Texas heartbeat bills, and this is another way that they don't establish equal justice. Romans 13 says that the magistrate wields not the sword in vain. Our symbol of justice, Lady Justice, she has a sword in one hand and a scales in the other. That means that number one, Lady Justice wields the sword. Number two, everybody is equal before the law. But not with these. Not with these. What happens is that if you're accused of some type of an abortion, now the state doesn't have any hand in it. We're prosecuting murder, which is what we all say it is. We're prosecuting murder as a tort, as a civil suit. So now the government has gotten out of its God-ordained constitutionally and Declaration of Independence mandated duty of protecting the God-given unalienable right to life, and has thrown that onus on the citizenry. Another thing is, the original Roe decision, erroneously, I might add, declared that a woman has a 14th Amendment right to privacy, which allows her, again, erroneously, a constitutional right to murder her children in utero. So what that Supreme Court decision said is that we, the government, don't have any constitutional or statutory authority to investigate in this particular arena. But what these heartbeat bills, what these Texas heartbeat bills that prosecute murder as a civil suit, what these do is they now take the investigatory authority away from the government and foist that on the citizenry, which you don't have. I don't have. If you're not a private investigator or a law enforcement officer and you don't have probable cause, you cannot go and just start surveilling people or investigating people. That's called stalking, and it's a crime. Furthermore, if you do know that a crime has been committed, you don't sue somebody over it. You go to law enforcement and you file charges. That's what we do when we have crimes. These bills are wrong from beginning to end, and they completely undermine our foundation of equal justice under the law. Nobody's above it, nobody's below it, and they undermine it in the foundation of under the foundational doctrine of you're innocent until proven guilty. And they also undermine it in that the punishment needs to fit the crime. They undermine it in that we've given carte blanche immunity to the principle of the crime in each of these cases, and we're only prosecuting other principles. Or somebody that, in the case of somebody that drives his girlfriend, wife, significant other to Planned Parenthood to procure an abortion, that person is an accessory. But that this is the person and the abortionist who can be sued, but not the mother who's paying for and initiating the whole thing. I tell you all of these things to tell you that we must be wise as serpents and also harmless as doves. One of the old-timey warriors said, "Be careful in victory, for a foe can strike you down while your hand is raised in triumph." It is my sincerely held belief that these bills are nothing more than fluff, and they will not reduce the number of abortions that happen in the state of Oklahoma by one. I hope they do, but we already have 300 to 400 such laws on the books. And here's another question. If Senate Bill 612 was the thing that's going to end abortion, how many times have we heard that? How many times have we been told that? This is the bill that's going to end abortion. It went over to the House last year. Why didn't it get a hearing? Well, we had other things that we had to hear. Oh, like what? State horse? State sandwich? Some bill about medical marijuana? What other things did we have to hear that trumped sanctity of life? You know why it didn't get heard until this year? Because this year is an election year. And we can campaign on the deaths of the preborn for the next 100 years if we continue to pass these do-nothing laws. It makes me sick, and I hope it makes you sick too. God bless you, God bless Oklahoma, and God bless America.